everybody. Welcome to the Fired Up with CJ show. We are talking today to Jillian Pransky, and we're talking about her book, Deep Listening, a healing practice to calm your body, clear your mind, and open your heart. So welcome, Jillian.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here because I really, really need this right now. I think I mentioned this to you when we were talking earlier, but my son just left for college, and I'm so close to him. And my youngest son is going to be leaving in probably a year and a half, or actually slightly longer than a year and a half. And I'm approaching the empty nesting stage. And what I did when I had them is I kind of rushed into their birth, and then have just been like having action items and planning lists up until maybe for the last, I don't know, for probably the first 10 years of their life. And so this time around, I really wanted to be conscious and intentional versus just running around. I think escaping the transitions and changing. So instead being in a place of deep listening. So this is divinely timed. So thank you.
Thank you.
What prompted you to write this book?
Um, I have been practicing yoga and meditation for a very long time, and the amount of well-being that I believe came directly from my practice, and then watching it have the same impact on just so many other people, so many of my students year after year. I couldn't not share what I've learned. It's helped my life so much. But then the impetus to actually put it in a book was how many students leave retreats and workshops and trainings. They go away with me into a very idyllic setting, and they believe that they've reached this balance and this state of calm that if only they could bring it back into their lives. So they were in search of a resource. How do I do this at home? How do I do this in my daily life? And that really was the fire behind wanting to create the teachings in a medium that translate into our day-to-day life.
I teach workshops myself, and one of the things that I do is I try to hold the space so that whatever magic is going to occur, whatever needs to occur, occurs. And I'm wondering that whether, because you talk about the concept of holding, and when you go to a retreat, you're relying on the person who's leading the retreat to hold the space. But then when you get home, there's no one holding the space unless you hold the space for yourself. And so I wonder whether that's part of the magic of what your book offers, is teaching you how to hold the space yourself when your teacher's not around.
Yes, I'm so glad that that's what you have taken from the book.
Mm-hmm.
That is at the heart of the book. I progressively teach through the book different ways to grow more and more aware of what helps us hold space for ourselves, starting with what's holding us.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the teacher or the support system are the two most lifelong partners we have.
Mm-hmm.
They're the earth and the breath. And if
Mm.
we can come into the awareness of how we're always being held, how we are always being nourished and supported by literally the earth that is underneath us, that holds our weight, that holds our body, that holds our lifetime in our body on the planet. And then our breath, how that nourishes us and fills us. These two elements that if we can literally grow more conscious of our actual partnership, our actual relationship with these elements, then we can learn our relationship to ourself more deeply and learn the ways that we can create our own safe space inside rather than having someone purposely create a safe space around us and
Right.
hold that space. Yeah.
Right. They talk about change from the inside out. This is, in the case for you, it's like you're the outside supportive, holding space in the meditation retreat. But if you can actually be that holding space yourself, and like you said, hold, and with the breath, create your own little microcosm of a yoga retreat, in with yourself being on retreat by yourself in
Yeah.
yourself. So let's actually break it down for people who aren't as familiar or haven't necessarily read your book, Deep Holding or Deep Listening. What do you mean by holding?
Um, by holding rather than listening. I'm glad you actually went back to holding
Yes.
again. I want to back up for one moment and think of we call someone like me a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a meditation teacher, a wellness teacher, a yoga teacher. And that sets up a relationship between me and who I'm working with, and therefore they are the student. But really, those words are somewhat misleading.
Mm-hmm.
Although they have proper labels to them in one way, the real work is that I am holding a space, creating a space where whoever it is that I'm sharing space with can feel themselves more, can hear themselves more, can listen and learn from inside themselves more. So, in one way, a teacher does that for us, like
Mm-hmm.
me. And the tools that I use, what I would bring to someone's awareness is very literally step number one, like step number one, notice the ground underneath you.
Mm-hmm.
As simple as that. Step number one, bring your attention, bring your awareness, bring your focus to what is physically, literally, structurally holding your body up.
Mm-hmm.
And begin by investigating, being curious about what is your relationship to allowing the structure, the support system under you actually carry you.
Mm-hmm.
Are you allowing what you're on to carry your body?
Mm-hmm.
And that becomes a beautiful first step, because if we don't feel supported, if we don't recognize and allow our body weight to be carried, then we go around building protection and armor and tension and holding and control and picking ourselves up and running ourselves forward without remembering that we don't have to hold everything up, that there's a
Mm-hmm.
ground under us to hold us.
Mm-hmm.
And when we acknowledge that, it calms the nervous system and releases tension in the body, which makes room for more breath. And once we allow more breath in our body and allow the breath to be more fluid and unobstructed, our nervous system shifts into a place that is more calm and more clear, and we begin to sort of rewire our habitual stress response.
Mm-hmm.
So all of these amazing teachings come from step number one, relate to the support. And in a lot of ways, a teacher, or what I'm good at, or my role, is really to point others to remember support.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm good at that, and therefore that's my role. And once they remember the support, the breath comes in, and we start to learn from a deeper place inside of ourselves than from what everybody else is telling us out there.
Right. It's so I have a couple different experiences with holding, and one is a class that I took where it was Feldenkrais, but it's very similar in terms of body awareness, and you're actually placing your feet on the floor and noticing where your weight is distributed. Is it on your heels? Is it on the ball of your foot? Is it even on the right and the left side? So you're getting super curious about how you're holding yourself relative to the ground. And then they go through a series of movements, and then at the end, you feel what it feels like when your body is completely relaxed, anatomically situated in a perfect balance. And it's kind of shocking when you do that, and I feel the same way in a yoga class. And it's amazing because you get curious, like, why is it that my body is holding, actually for me, it's like I don't put any weight if I try to remember. I don't, I have more on my right side, and I think I don't have it my whole foot on the floor. So if you get curious, why is it? And also, I was lying in bed yesterday thinking, and I was thinking, okay, relax into the bed, relax into the bed. And it's amazing because I wasn't relaxed. And you mentioned that also in your book that
Yeah.
you notice that you are not being held, and that you describe it as tension that's held in your body. What is that tension, and what does it mean when you think about that tension that you may, if you're not being held, if you find yourself, you have a similar to experience like that I had or that you had initially, what does it mean?
So tension is a way that we armor ourselves. We build. So let me start here. Actually, tightness. Let me differentiate tightness from tension. Tightness might be a result of physical activity. We played a tennis game, we went for a run, or maybe when we went for a hike, maybe we carried a lot of groceries, maybe we gardened or painted our bedroom. Tension is using muscular effort in some way, or body mechanic, or tightness. Tightness is using muscular effort or the body mechanics in some way, and then developing some overuse or contraction of that muscle fiber and not stretching it out or bringing it back to its resting length or finding ease in the body.
Okay.
Tightness is a result of using the body in a particular way and then having the muscle stay contracted. Whereas tension is different than tightness. Tension has a psycho-emotional component to it.
Mm,
It's the way we tighten our body in response to how we feel.
mm,
And it's usually an effort of resisting something from outside, sort of like ducking or protecting or hardening so that something doesn't hurt so much in one way or another. We don't want to hear it. We don't want to see it. We don't want to feel it. We want to block it. It could be something very literal. That's we're wired to protect ourselves from, like you're walking past a park and someone throws a baseball and you protect yourself
right,
from being hit by the ball or jumping out of the way of an oncoming car.
right.
So there's a real survival response to protecting ourselves from something we perceive is going to hurt us.
Mm-hmm.
And science shows we protect ourselves whether it's really an oncoming car or a barking dog, or whether it's from feeling rejected or insulted or not like we don't belong.
Right.
So we have the same bodily response, both in the heart rate and the breathing rate and preparing ourselves to fight and flee, and in physically tensing our body to armor ourselves. All those things happen, whether it's from a physical attack or a mental or emotional assault from someone to us or from us to ourselves,
Right.
the stories we have in our own head.
So the tension may be, so if I find myself, and so, and what's interesting is the tension, the tightness, they start kind of pairing together. So
Yeah.
I sit on my butt a lot. And so as a result, my hip flexors contract. And my hip flexors contract, my back actually extends, and then my butt clenches. Okay, so the net effect is butt clenching, hits all this kind of tension created from just sitting all the time typing on the computer. And so there's tightness that is happening in my butt, the clenching, right? But then also I'm facing a situation where I'm trying to control this free fall of empty nesting. And so I'm not really sure what came first, the chicken or the egg. So is it the tension or the tightness or both? And I sometimes
Right.
think that they have an interplay between the two.
Absolutely. I made it sound very neat, like there were these two neat, separate things, but they are always intertwined, which becomes really important to recognize when we're working with the body and trying to unfurl layer by layer. It's like, peeling that onion or whatever it is we're doing. It takes a lot of gentleness and thoughtfulness and environment setting, holding, space holding, ground holding. So how these intertwine with each other can become, um, we need a gentle, we're so trained to think that we have to rip things open and pull things apart and get things done and mind over matter and no pain, no gain. But tension, if it's going to unfurl and let go, if we're going to be able to relax the way we armor, we have to feel safe. If it has a psycho-emotional component that was driven by feeling threatened, the only way we are designed to let go of our protection mechanism is if we feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
So this brings us back to why holding space is so important. If we intend to unfurl and untangle the way tightness and tension have wound like vines around each other, like an insidious plant that sort of straps around something else of beauty, we have to create an environment where we feel safe enough to start to untangle all of that.
Mm.
So tension and holding space and really allowing ourselves to be held are essential to bring together as a practice. And it brings us back to sort of the bed comment.
Mm-hmm.
If tension is really a way we are protecting ourselves, whether it's from something coming at us or something we're ignoring or avoiding inside of us, and what the net result of tension is that we're bound together. And so
Mm-hmm.
I talk about it in my book, is that if you could imagine how it would feel to be at a beautiful party, a beautiful gathering. Maybe it's the Thanksgiving gatherings coming up, and you're potentially with all your favorite people being served all your favorite foods. And if you were in an outfit, clothing, two sizes too small or three sizes too small, and you were at that event, like, I don't know about you, but I would be totally agitated the whole time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't be able to focus on my loved ones or the incredible, banquet or the beauty of gratitude even. I wouldn't be
Mm-hmm.
able to recognize my gratitude if I was constricted and distracted and wanting nothing more than to like rip off this squeezed in outfit. Tension is the too tight clothes we always have on. And when we're bound up like that, we we are inherently not sensing the support underneath us. We
Mm-hmm.
are kept off the ground, kept off our beds, kept away from others. It's an armor that separates us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
in order to really feel the ground, we have to, or sort of it's an oscillation, feel the ground. You can unbutton one button of those too tight clothes. Feel the
Right.
ground a little more, you can unbutton two buttons. Like the more you drop into the ground, the more the clothes naturally begin to drape on you,
Mm.
being so zipped up and buttoned up.
Right.
And only when we can unbutton in that way does the breath begin to come in. So these partners, the ground and the breath, are then able to meet through you once there's a little bit of release in that
Mm.
tightness of that closing. That clothing is tension, and we can't drop into support when it's too tight. Yet dropping into support is what also allows us to take it off. So we go back
Right.
and forth.
Yeah, I
We
guess. So
go,
the back and forth is dropping into, like, I feel the ground, and then breathing in, and then relaxing your whole body and opening up. Oh, I feel the ground. Great. Tell us, can you actually take us through the pause and reset? That's like a perfect thing I think that you can be doing if you're running around, rushing around during Thanksgiving. Um,
yes.
can you share with the audience this three breath pause and reset?
Yes. So in deep listening, I have 9 different ways to do a pause and reset. And I'm going to just introduce you to one of them.
Hmm.
Um, this is probably one of my favorites because it's so simple and it allows me to feel grounded very quickly and open up my breath, feel much more spacious, like I just took off that agitating, too tight outfit. So the imagery we'll use is a sand timer, an hourglass. And step number one is before we take the 3 breaths is just grow aware of where you are in space. If our listeners are standing or sitting in a car, on the ground, it doesn't matter where you are, notice what's under your body,
Mm-hmm.
what's under your feet, what's under your seat. And you're welcome to close your eyes if you wish. You can also keep them open if you prefer. Bring to mind the image of an hourglass and imagine how when it's turned upside down, the sand will drain from the full top half down into the bottom half close to the ground. And we'll use the next 3 breaths to imagine our body like an hourglass. So imagine you've been turned upside down. Well, imagine the sand is at the crown of your head. And on an exhale, all the sand drains from the head to the shoulders. Feel the inhale expand that space. And on the next exhale, from the shoulders down, torso and arms to the belly. Feel the inhale expand. And as the next exhale flows out, imagine all the heaviness, all the sand in you draining out of your head and upper body and filling your legs, your lower half, all the sand in the bottom half of you on the ground. And then take one more breath just to notice the clear upper hourglass. Feel your inhale, fill your clear upper hourglass. Let your eyes gently open. Just imagine yourself being in this space with your weight close to the ground, your upper body light and open.
It's funny, when I did that, I could feel like there was tension in my shoulders that I didn't feel before. I was like, wow, when we were dropping down from the sands, we're going from this to this, everything was okay. From here to here, it was like my shoulders were still holding, maybe in a protective way. And then it kind of dropped down, and then it was okay from dropping. The sands were dropping down from my waist or hip area all the way to it. That was fine, but it was really, I could feel something in my back, but I could definitely feel the tension in this area. So if you were to do this exercise yourself, whether you're sitting, at the groceries, maybe not when you're driving the car, if you want to examine further, but how would you go in to explore those areas that you're holding?
Yeah, it's a great question. First of all, I happen to love doing it while I'm driving with my eyes open and at a red light.
Yes, exactly.
But
I'm not suggesting doing while driving.
but it is a great idea to play with it during activity. I do this all the time while I'm blow drying my hair, while I'm brushing my teeth. I don't know about you, but I discover I blow dry my hair like this for no reason. Then it's a habit.
Yeah.
It's a habit. And I do the dishes like this. And what happens is we get so used to living with tension and with our patterns that we see it as the norm. And when we drain down, we start to notice where it's habitual. And the first thing I do is go, God damn it, I thought I just dropped my shoulders a moment ago.
All right.
Or I'll say, still.
Yeah.
Or why? And I have a quality of judgment or disappointment or aggravation.
Right.
I'm angry. I'm disappointed. I am bummed out that my shoulders are still tense. And I see it as something wrong rather than something right. So let's start there, because how I respond to finding my shoulders tense will either leave them feeling more tense or allow them to relax. If I respond to them all bummed out and pissed off and angry at them for still being, or angry at myself or my shoulders, depending on who I'm placing the blame, I might place the blame on my shoulders or I might place the blame on myself.
Right.
But either way, if I'm angry or upset or disappointed that I'm still carrying tension in my shoulders, the response will feel somewhat the same as a stress response. It's an attack. I'm bullying myself. I'm somehow not okay. I'm not making the space safe for my shoulders to just be tense.
Right.
So they get better at staying up. if I find that they're tense and I say instead a response like, oh, it's okay, it's okay, shoulders, or it's okay, Jillian, or oh, they're tense. If I just notice it as a point of curiosity and information without judgment or without disappointment, then I'm creating an environment that either my shoulders are going to be tense anyway, but me being okay with it changes my response to them and changes the environment. Or
Mm-hmm.
in changing my response, they naturally feel more at ease
Mm-hmm.
and restful. It's that response that we are looking to train in, whether it's tight shoulders or crazy thoughts, or when we lose our mind after yelling at my 14-year-old to get off his iPhone just one more of the umpteenth times. Like if every time I find, whether it's my action, my thoughts, my shoulders, whatever it may be, how we respond to what we find is really the skill. That's how we're holding the space for ourselves.
And I'm just going to go to you have a meditation that you talk about listening openly, softly, and wholly, which it seems like is a perfect segue into
Yeah.
this. Would you mind sitting, um, coaching us through or providing some version of this that helps us demonstrate what that means? Like, oh, my shoulders are tight, or whatever is happening. Maybe I'm, you're on that iPhone again, whatever it is.
Oh my God, I find myself saying that all the time. Um, what page is
It's
that
on
on?
page 142 on your book.
Okay, so sure. Let me ask you a question. I'm happy to either bring us through a meditation if you'd like, or just talk about it. What did you have a hope for me
Let's
to?
actually bring us through it, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
Okay, okay. Um,
What
so this is gonna,
we've already talked about it. I guess coach us through it.
yeah.
Step us through it.
Okay. So I will say one thing to set up. So I'm going to guide us through it, and this will be a few minutes of seated meditation where we're going to become grounded again, just like we did in the hourglass. And then we're going to begin to listen. We'll listen to our breath. We will listen within our body and sort of take a moment to connect with the breath through this process and look at the environment we're creating
Mm-hmm.
on how we listen. Okay, so come to a position of your choice. Take a few moments again to notice how your body meets support. Eyes can be open or closed. One more long exhale. Imagine all the sand draining down, all the weight of your body close to the earth. And imagine you have nostrils on the center of your chest where the breath moves in and out. And we're just going to begin by tracing with our awareness this feeling of the breath moving through your chest, as if it came in through a nostril right into your chest. The inhale expands and opens your whole torso. The exhale tracing the path to go back out. And just imagine that on the inhale, the breath softly, tenderly meets the inside of your chest, any tension it finds, any rigidity it finds. And as you exhale, it allows the chest to soften as it leaves. Again, just feel how the inhale, how the breath meets you inside, how the breath tenderly meets you inside your chest. And it leaves you a little softer inside as you exhale, untangling gently any knots it finds. And slowly place your right hand on your chest. You can stack your left hand on top. stacking your hands over your chest. And bring your attention under your hands. And feel your breath meeting your hands. Could mentally, very gently greet your breath, welcome your breath. And as you feel your breath under your hands, begin to also just listen to the audible sound of your breath. So you feel it, you're gently aware of it with your mind, with your body, with your ears. And just practice as you listen, as you pay attention to your breath and its movement, and the way it's soft and caring inside. Your breath is literally caring for you inside. And as you're giving your breath your attention, open your attention to yourself, to the space under your hands. So we're practicing listening to the breath, curiously, openly, resting our mind in this space under our hands, in the chest center. Letting the breath flow freely on its own, in and out through the heart space. Allowing the breath to soften in the whole heart space as it rises and falls. Each breath tenderly meeting you inside. And listen, the breath is tenderly meeting you. Just as your breath meets you, meet yourself. Just as your breath tenderly receives everything it comes into contact with, welcome whatever arises in you. Thoughts, feelings, tension, whatever you find. Just as your breath stays with you, no matter what unfolds, stay with yourself. Softly meet this moment in you. Softly welcome the whole of you. Just as the breath cares for you. Be with yourself in that way. Listening inward, openly, softly, tenderly, wholly. Breath is always whispering sweetly to you. Breath is always sweet and caring. Just one more moment, see if you could meet yourself in the way that the breath meets you, right under your hands. And as you exhale, return your awareness to feel how the ground is welcoming you, how the earth is holding you. The earth is always holding you. So the breath can fill you sweetly and softly and lovingly. The breath fills you. The ground and the breath holding space for you so that there can be more space for you to be with yourself in this compassionate way. Slowly bring your hands to meet in Anjali Mudra in prayer. Then soften your head to your heart. Just set an intention to stay connected to the support under you, to be with yourself in this caring way, that the ground and the earth are there for you. And may you come back to this feeling, this space, again and again throughout the day today. Namaste.
Namaste. Wow, that's quite lovely. I wonder what it was interesting as I was getting curious about all the yoga classes that I've taken and all the meditation sittings that I've done. What really came up for me is the difference between how you hold the breath, and meaning the breath is there to love and embrace and welcome you, your highest you, into the equation. It carries the highest you, your highest consciousness is in the breath. And it's so different than, I'm in Vipassana and I'm focusing in and out of my nostrils, and it's almost like a metronome, and it has this kind of punitive, like, oh no, I lost my breath, and it has a very different kind of energy versus even just the way that there was a perceptual shift in how I thought of the breath that I think is really profound, because if you've done a lot of these spiritual practices, I do think the breath is always said conceptually to be life and full of consciousness and awareness, but not of love, but that kind of is like maybe tertiary or fourth on the list. But I like actually popping it to the first and foremost, because I think in meditation, because the focus is on our breath, we can get super punitive, like you were talking
Yeah,
about originally. And so just seeing it as an embrace and love is such a huge change.
yeah. I do think that that initial step of syncing up with the breath is important and instructional to lure someone towards paying attention to it. But people sometimes stop there. I think it has merit to use instruction that allows us to see the breath first as a tool to like pull you to it, and then as an awareness of how the breath is the metronome, but it's the metronome for the present moment. And if
Mm,
you keep going into that idea, then it is the present moment, which means it's always evolving and shape shifting and changing. And once you sync up with that, you become less fixed and less linear and less instructional, and start to get more oceanic in that
mm-hmm,
flow of the breath. And then
mm-hmm,
it allows us to entertain this idea. I don't throw out, I do throw out love really quickly and easily, but also because I feel it so deeply, I have to
mm-hmm,
watch my audience. But I have come to really experience that breath is grace.
Mm.
That breath is grace. Breath is grace. Grace is love. This is the energy that we are reminding ourselves of our true nature as this grace and love that we also are. And my practice has led me into sort of the most interesting state of where I am right now, and I don't know where I'll be in 5 years when you and I talk again, but I am really intrigued and interested in this partnership of the earth, the breath, and us, and me,
Mm.
and you, and each of us as a threesome between the earth and the breath, but how that threesome partnership brings us into our collective.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's so important for me to constantly go back to that holding and the breath filling in order for me to feel most whole myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then in order for me to feel connected to you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and once you play with those ideas, the breath can't be utilitarian anymore. It's
Mm-hmm.
your life partner. It's
Mm.
it's 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 just it's our life partner.
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm thinking back at a lot of the meditation practices that I've experienced throughout the time I've been on this journey, much like yourself, like for probably like I don't know 16. You've been on it for longer, but like 16, 18 years. Um, and they're some of them are very earth focused, some of them are very head focused, and the ones that I'm doing right now are very much up in the ethers, like you're trying to expand your consciousness and be a beacon of light. And what I've noticed with those kind of practices is that you're not entirely here on earth anymore. I mean, you are literally trying to go out into the ethers and you're becoming more air, but you've lost your wholeness in the sense that you're no longer earth anymore. You're just, out here in the water, air kind of thing. You're
Yeah.
missing all those things. And so, what I like about yoga, your practice, is a reminder for us that it's the whole picture. It's not just, oh, I'm going to get enlightened and get, higher consciousness. It's like, yes, and you're here on earth to do something with that, to
Yeah.
connect with others more deeply, connect with yourself more deeply, help other people in whatever way you can, whether it's writing or, creating something or, being in a helping profession like I think yoga is. But I think it's almost like a seesaw. Like sometimes we get so heady that we forget to be grounded and practical and be of earth. So this has been a nice reminder for me.
Yeah, I love that you brought all that up because I grappled a long time. I went depending on who you're learning from and what techniques you're using and who your teachers are and what they emphasize and what lineage it comes from and what part
Mm-hmm.
of history it comes from.
Yes.
We're either encouraged to be out of our bodies and to
Mm-hmm.
transcend. When I started yoga, that was a huge word, transcend,
Mm-hmm.
transcend. Enlightenment has a lot to do with transcendence.
Yeah.
But we actually are bodily beings and we are more than bodily beings. But if we're creating union to feel this big connection, we are still in a body and
Right.
we are still of the earth and those the dynamic of the earth and the breath and our place in it do make us feel bigger than our body when we practice that way. I want to say one other thing is that you used the imagery of a seesaw, and there is some merit to going back and forth between grounding and ethereal practices, depending on what elements are heavier in one's own being. So if someone was so weighted down, and what you mentioned in our other conversations that
Yeah.
you and I have had together, you talked about Ayurveda and you talked about Vata.
Yeah, I'm
And
Vata
so,
Pitta.
right,
Almost
so
no kasha or what is it?
um, uh,
Kosha, right? Or
no, uh,
Pitta Vata, the one that's Earth. I'm not
yes.
that one.
So, um, wow, blanking, but it will come out as I'm speaking to you.
Yeah.
So for someone Vata and Vata Pitta, the air and expansiveness
Right.
is not going to be very balancing.
Right.
Um, but rather grounding practice is that part of the seesaw when you feel really airy, when you feel really out there, when you're feeling really creative and your mind is working very fast and you're very spacious. You want to emphasize some grounding
Mm-hmm.
practices.
Mm-hmm.
um Kapha, by the way, we're looking for
Kapha. Yep.
some kapha or kaphas
Yeah.
depending on who you're talking to. And if somebody's really lethargic or heavy or bodily or so earthbound, whether it's in their view of the world or in their body, or in their lifestyle, then they may need to balance themselves with bringing their awareness up and out in a way that may emphasize practices that are a little bit um, above the earth, but only for enough time until the energies balance more. So there's merit to finding balance in our individual bodies about which one to emphasize. But in the end story, while we're on the planet in a body, then I feel really responsible to living the most harmonious, compassionate, thoughtful life that I can. So I'm going to bring together the elements of being on the planet in my practices, which make me feel most whole. And that is what I like to offer and hold the space for with
Mm-hmm.
others.
Mm-hmm. I love it's the openness, wholeness, because this meditation was all about openness, wholeness, and I can't remember what the other word is, a spaciousness, I assume, something
Mm,
like that. But I think that that is openly, softly, wholly. And I
mm,
think that that's really the balance, inner and outer balance, because the softly part is the part that I was missing because I think
mm.
of the breath as a metronome, kind of reminding me when I'm not doing appropriately, which is not focusing.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it feels so different. The other thing that I really liked in this is that you talk about the three questions that you ask when you're in a yoga practice, which for me, I'm someplace in this muddy middle of when I do yoga, which is like I'm getting a workout, I'm stretching, but then this is also for me to do yoga, a union of mind, body, and spirit. So I'm doing that, but I love how you actually talk about. Could you touch upon how your questions of how do you feel, and you ask the three questions: How am I? How do I feel right now? What do I need to know? And so I'm curious when you or maybe do yoga on your own, how does this all integrate into a practice?
Yeah. So I'm constantly reflective or contemplative about what am I doing? What part of what I'm doing is habitual?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I over efforting? Where am I under efforting? Where am I resisting being in this pose? Where am I creating resistance to my breath? Where am I not feeling the ground? So a lot of my questions are to get me to pay attention to how I'm participating in movement with my body in relationship to the earth and the breath. That's what I need out in the world. While I'm blow drying my hair, I'm still in relationship to ground and
Yeah,
breath.
you're
And now
still doing yoga.
right. This is my pose now. My
Right.
pose is the blow dryer pose. My pose is the toothbrush pose. My pose is the
Right.
washing dishes. My pose is being with my son. I just had breakfast with my son before I met you
Mm-hmm.
here on the podcast, and he called me up while I was out and asked if I wanted to meet at a cafe, which should be, it's a lovely idea. I'm so happy he did that. We arrived at the table and sat down, and he started checking his text. And so as soon as that started happening, I could feel my shoulders going up and my seat clenching me
Right.
off of the seat, which would make my breath shallow. Which so my yoga pose is being at the breakfast table with my son on his iPhone and deciding how am I going to meet this moment? What might I say that's either going to allow us both to connect more, or am I going to create a defensiveness about the way I ask him to put that down, which is going to separate us more?
Mm.
So I ask the questions in Warrior Two, or in Bridge Pose, or in Bow Pose, or in Child's Pose that are going to serve my awareness about how I'm
Mm.
holding myself in my body and how am I relating my breath when I'm at that breakfast table with my son or in a conversation with you or typing on my computer. And then the answers I get help me handle those moments that might create more connection rather than less.
Right, so you come from a place of openness and spaciousness and wholeness, and then respond to whatever is happening, whether it's the warrior two, and for me, my butt's always sticking out in warrior two, so I'm always like tucking in my tailbone.
Right.
So instead of like, oh look, your butt's out there. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, pull it back, honey. Just
Right. So instead of thinking of
responding.
the shape, so a lot of times a yoga instructor, especially if they're newer to the practice, their own practice and to sharing it, their language might wind up thinking someone might wind up thinking, oh, warrior two means my arms go here and my legs go there and my feet need to line up in this way. And all of a sudden we're following this like paint by color instruction of how the body shape should be in order to accomplish warrior two.
Mm,
Whereas that may have been important to me in my first year or five of practice. Am I doing the pose right? Am I in the right position? But that doesn't give a sense of reflection of how much tone do I really need in the muscles and where. So I started noticing my warrior two was much like my blow drying pose. My shoulders were my ears,
mm-hmm.
my
Yeah,
arms were really tight,
right.
and I was accomplishing warrior two when really my arms didn't need to do anything but float out like wings,
Mm-hmm.
and I could instead find the power in stretching into the size of my footprints, and I didn't need my quads to grip and hold on so tightly. Instead, you find the tone and the support, the ground comes not only from the earth holding you up, but the grounding in the pose comes from firming the bottom muscles of your seat and your thighs, the bum, the back of your hamstrings, the back of your seat. If those could firm and rise up to hold you, just like the ground holds you,
Mm-hmm.
you could almost sit into your body and relax your shoulders and open your chest and breathe. So I don't need to hold my whole body frozen. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times we do poses and we freeze ourselves into a shape, and it perpetuates how we freeze ourselves all day long
Mm,
from activity to
right.
activity. And where's the yoga in that?
Right.
That's just an
Instead of it
exercise
like
position.
awakening us and being aware of something, we're just like, okay, I'm going to follow everyone else and what I think I'm supposed to be doing and what it's
Right.
supposed to be looking like, and versus kind of, oh, where am I today?
The
What's
yoga,
happening?
the
Yeah.
yoga is not in the pose. The yoga is not the pose. The yoga is not warrior two. It's not being in the position or learning the position. The yoga is how are we in partnership, union? Where is the union in this shape between me and the ground and the breath? How much do I have to participate? Where do I have to participate? What muscles would be most wise to support me? What muscles would be most wise to open and be receptive? How am I in relationship?
Mm.
That's where the yoga fits into being in warrior two shape.
Yeah, and it's kind of an advanced idea because at first you're just trying to figure out the technical pieces that you don't hurt yourself and you're getting the most benefit out of the pose. And I think after I've been doing yoga for like 18 years, and I think I hadn't even thought until reading your book about, well, what does this mean at this moment about, I know the concept of the Sitka and Sut, it's an effort and ease, the
Easy.
idea of balancing effort and ease at the same time as you're holding the pose, and yet I'm not there all the time. So what I'm
It's
hearing you say
just
is be there all the time.
it's just like your breath comment when we were talking about meditation. And at first, it is essential that that breath has a utilitarian aspect. It is a metronome of sorts, just for pace and for awareness. Just like sort of getting the strokes of where the body posture might be, just like learning any kind of music. You learn the notes so you could play. Eventually, you learn the notes so you could play from your heart and your body.
Mm,
And it is a progressive experience. We start learning skills, but eventually those skills are there to help us grow beyond what we think we know and into a place that is much more organic where the wisdom can come from inside. So
Mm-hmm.
we take some structure, hopefully, if the space is holding us and we feel safe, if we feel safe and held, we begin to mm, rewire our nervous system. So the part of our brain, that intuition and inspiration, the prefrontal cortex, the bigger picture, learning, openness, curiosity, when we feel held and safe, we begin to access a much bigger body of information than the numbers and paint by numbers could ever give us, than the
Mm.
structure of the posture could ever give us, than the utilitarianness of following the breath can ever give us. And all of those steps will eventually set us up to go for a bigger and bigger and bigger and boundless picture eventually if you continue to practice.
I love it. We've been talking to Jillian Pransky, and what I love about this book is it really is an expression of that. Her book, Deep Listening, where you really step people from the very beginning steps to understand kind of the process and the structure, but then add little by little and in an additive, slow, graceful way so that you can achieve what your students wanted to achieve when going to your class and your retreats. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It means so much to me that you're listening to the show. I would love your support in any way by giving me comments below or to subscribe to the show or share the show with friends. Thank you again for your support. Love and blessings.